I'm Walid Tamtam for Juno here in Belém, Brazil for COP30, where I took some time today to ask guest attendees their opinion on Bill Gates' recent opinion piece. Now, Bill Gates took an opinion piece recently where he argued the premise that the world ought to turn off the alarmism for climate change and shift focus onto human well-being. Now, I asked a number of attendees whether or not they agreed or not and why. Here's more on that. So what's your reaction to Bill Gates' op-ed where he argues that the world should focus less on carbon emissions and more on human welfare?
Well, it depends for which country we're talking about. There are some still countries that are developing, so maybe they still need carbon emissions to achieve their goals and to start focusing on economic sector. And for the countries that already achieved their carbon emissions peak, maybe I can agree with him, yeah, but it depends on which country we're talking about.
I agreed with the premise that Bill Gates highlighted that while climate isn't the only challenge that faces the world, it's extremely important. Thinking about livelihoods, all are come back to being connected to both the land, the environment, the livelihoods that people are living in. And so simply highlighting that we don't need climate to be the catch-all for all of international development, I think was positive and wasn't meant to try to obfuscate the importance of climate change.
There was not enough founded basis for the alarmism that the world was going to end. I think we exist of a world of species that are all looking for equilibrium, and I think to focus on how can we adapt and thrive with the climate instead of trying to stay in that equilibrium with alarmism, I think is the right approach. So looking at food security, water security, and how can we use that to our advantage is thinking there. I think that's the right approach, and it allows for more pragmatic solutions.
I don't think really this is a black and white issue. So of course you need to care about both. And I think if you don't fix the climate issue, then of course you will have human welfare going down as well. So both of them are very important.
I think it's totally interlinked, so you cannot do one without the other. So if you want to focus on human welfare, you have to tackle climate change, and the other way around. You cannot just tackle climate change without taking care of human welfare. So you cannot separate it. So if he does both, great.
I would not agree that it's opposing goals, but I would agree that human welfare is key. We need to make it work for the people. We need to make it work for the people on the ground. And that is true, because otherwise we don't have the majority to bring climate change ahead. So it's not opposing goals.
I don't agree with him. I think someone like Bill Gates has became very wealthy off a system called capitalism, and it is the same system that is driving this crisis. And there is no ability for us to be well in this place. We've seen, just in the last 5 years, global pandemic. We're not protected from, what's happening around us in our natural environment. We need to, as Indigenous peoples, we advocate for it. For looking after land, looking after our people, looking after our country. We need to live more sustainably with this land, and human well-being is not separate from that. We are not separate from plants, we are not separate from animals. And so the work that we have to do to combat the climate crisis is urgent. This is the critical decade. We are halfway through. We cannot slow down now.
In Indigenous culture, in our cultures, the climate health and human health are intrinsically interrelated. If the climate is unwell, our humans are unwell. We cannot help one thing without the other because they're so interrelated.
I was very disappointed with his statements, because he made a book about climate change a number of years ago, really putting the issue on the top. And we have to focus on human development, of course, but human development is only possible if we're able to fix the climate. If we don't fix the climate, our human development will not even be possible. So I think his opinion in this case is wrong.
Somehow I don't disagree a bit, because we talk about carbon emissions, eventually in the future it will affect us as people as well. So we should focus on both human welfare and also the carbon emissions, because if we stop focusing on the carbon emissions, eventually for us as young people in the future will be the main casualties of this indecisiveness at the moment. So I would say please fund both.
I agree, we need to take care about poverty very much, but we don't need to choose between the two. We need to bring in parallel the two missions were very important, they're urgent, in the same level and in parallel. So we don't need to make a priority between the two. Anyway, we as Green the Islands dealing with island sustainability. We deal indeed about sustainability. We deal about bringing energy to families that they don't have energy, or anyway the best, or water, for just to make an example. So, but the two match very well together.
I disagree. I would say that we need to focus on nature as much as humans in general. So I don't think the two are mutually exclusive. We're here to talk about the climate change, right, which is produced by humans. And as much as humans are affected by climate change, we also need to focus on the planet itself and how we can fight for the destruction of the planet and climate change in general. So I don't think that protecting human rights is a priority, obviously, but I don't think it should be instead of focusing on nature.
Well, as you can see, there's quite a bit of nuance there, surprisingly so, but for the most part, still, most attendees are firm on their climate religion, and of course, some of them were even upset at Bill Gates personally. But of course, that's what you come to expect from COP30, a shrinking environment of climate crazies with less and less support from the world as time goes on. I'm Walid Tamtam for True North here in Belém, Brazil, signing off.